We're going to do this. I don't have to take notes right now. Okay. So, oh, wrong button. Sorry. Share screen.
So after our last meeting, Bradley and Stephanie talked. And
we did. And actually, yeah, maybe I should go through that first. So Stephanie and I met to first figure out the roof picture. So we had gotten kind of what was called a final statement from Dave and Larry as to the roof funding and how that had kind of all worked out after the budget that the board had approved. In so doing, you know, we fixed a couple of holes and made everything balance and reconcile. And we determined that the fundraising had come in much stronger than anticipated when we set the budget and the approvals. And so we determined that first we can take $20,000 that we had originally taken out of this unrestricted net assets, which is kind of the cushion line. It's where we account for, like if we realize a deficit, that's where it would come from. So we determined that we did not indeed need to take that $20,000 out of there in the first place. And so our plan is to put that back, which is good news. So that's an even better kind of cushion to start off. And then we laid out very explicitly what is going back to the budget and what's going back to the endowment and when. So that's all figured out now. And because we did take a loan from the endowment for to kind of make up the difference, the cash flow while we had pledges coming in over the next 2 years. So that $20,000 is added into our cushion line, our unrestricted net assets. One important thing to keep in mind as we shift to looking at the actual budget for next year is that the projected budget deficit is what's considered the worst case scenario. It includes no increases in programs and has very little that could be cut in order to save money. It assumes that all 4 staff positions will be filled for the entire year, which I think is an almost certainty will not be the case. It's quite unlikely that we will have a membership person in the role starting January 1st. And we know that Janelle is here through June. And then we'll have some sort of a search. And there may be some overlap there, there may not. It's hard to know at this point. But it's quite possible that there could be a little savings there as well. And if we have, you know, of course, if we have openings, that's expense savings. We've kind of gone over that talking point. And then the other thing that Stephanie wanted to be sure was brought up is that we have a very strong endowment. So right now we're sitting at, I think, about 560,000. Some of that is actual, quote unquote, endowment, and some of it is just like our capital replacements fund is not an endowed thing. It's just money that is held in the same assets. So it's held in our investment accounts. But altogether, it adds up to about 560,000. So it's in really good shape. The money that we have taken out this year for expenses is essentially a moot point. It's already performing well and kind of replenished. So it's in good shape, and it has the potential to provide long-term support for the fellowship. So it's something that at some point, unless our membership numbers really turn around quickly and start to go back up quickly, it's quite likely that we will need to draw on the endowment in some way, shape, or form in the near future. So, but it is a strong resource that's there, and the tendency is to talk about it as money that's just never, ever, 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 ever to be touched or thought about or anything like that. And there are many ways that we can actually keep that money working and not really hurt the endowment at all, but we can still take advantage of it for certain operating needs. That is not what's being proposed tonight for the 2022 budget, but it is something that as ongoing board members, we want to keep in mind. So with that, I will share my screen. Okay, so this is little. Let me see if I can make it just a little bigger. So right now, this figure that's highlighted is our pledge figure. It's now up to 282,851. On our last meeting, it was only at 277, so it's gone up a little ways, about $5,000. Otherwise, I only made one little itty bitty adjustment, and that is I took out the $500 that was input for the It's Okay With Me dance. That is a February event, and so far we have not had any activity for a youth group. We don't have advisors. We don't have anyone leading that effort. So it doesn't seem very likely. So I went ahead and took that out. If that is a no-no, y'all can tell me. But otherwise, all the figures have stayed the same from last time.
If they need it, they could go to the Dream It Up Fund.
That's true. There are other options available. So our overall deficit is now at $40,293. So it's improved by about $6,000, I believe. Yeah. So if we look at the deficit of 40,000 and we say, okay, well, we know that our projections are showing that we'll have 53,000 in our unrestricted net assets to kind of absorb that deficit, we'll be okay. And look, if for some reason something unexpected happens, we still have the endowment to fall on, and it can handle a decent amount. For specific other items that I kind of caught today that might come up. So a summer camp, right now there's 1,500 budgeted for it. With Janelle leaving at the end of June, it's kind of questionable whether or not a summer camp will happen. We could have a lay-driven summer camp. That's possible. I tend to say, though, that that's probably not probable. So I would be inclined to take that 1,500 out. What does everyone feel about that?
I prefer to leave it in, but
Who are the targets of the summer camp? Sorry, I'm just not familiar. Is it the youth?
The last one that we did was K8, I think, and it was mostly K5.
Okay, so it's a younger group. Okay, I see.
Mm-hmm.
elementary aged.
Hmm.
Yep. Okay, well, y'all can sit on that one for a little bit.
Does anybody else have an opinion on that one?
I just have a question. How much does the summer camp draw in people that aren't part of the membership right now?
Yeah, the last camp we had was in 2017 or 18. And it had, there were close to 40 kids that participated. It's pretty big.
That was the Star Wars camp.
Yeah, it was a Star Wars camp, and I think we had maybe 3 that were not our own kids, maybe 5. And those kids were not as strong a participants as the others. They only came one or 2 days versus many of the others came all 5 days. So it's not a huge thing, but if you publicize it correctly, it has potential to at least show that, hey, we're alive and we're doing things, which can get other people in for other reasons.
But without someone to run it, it doesn't seem feasible.
It's certainly more challenging. It would take a lay team.
Mhm.
That's definitely not something that Janelle can pull together on top of everything else in the time that she has left.
And with COVID issues, that's also an issue there.
When does the community academy, do they have summer classes
That's the bulk of their programming at this point.
in the summer?
Although in 2022, and I don't know when, I'm inclined to say it's in the fall of 2022, they're going to start
The full
what's
program,
called, they're calling it a micro school.
micro school?
So, yeah. Sam, we are talking about the summer camp and the feasibility of such without staff leadership. If
I'm
you
sorry,
have
Bradley, could
feelings.
you repeat that? I was on the
Yeah.
other side of the room.
So we're talking about the summer camp and the feasibility of having one if it is not staff led, and kind of the pluses and minuses of that.
So with Janelle leaving at the end of the school year, we don't know if we'll have a replacement for her at that point. And so the question on the table is, do we leave summer camp expenses in there if we're uncertain about whether we'd have somebody to direct the camp?
I would say that we had a lot of enthusiasm from parents about having the camp. I would certainly like to look into the finding other solutions to it before we write it off. And I think that we can probably find a number of volunteers. And if Janelle is knows that she's going to be leaving, we can try and get as many of those ducks in a row in advance as need be.
Well, in talking with her today, she will not have time to dedicate towards pulling together a summer camp.
Okay.
So one other thing, this could also be another Dream It Up
Dream it up.
thing. As of the end of October, that fund has 8,900 in it. So it's in pretty good shape too. So my personal feeling is, in the interest of, we need to do what we can to cut this deficit down as much as possible.
Yeah, so I would agree with zeroing that out for this year, for 2022.
Yeah,
So-
I agree as well, especially if we have, if we need something, we can turn to Dream It Up and Do It Fund. I think we should pull it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I see.
I guess I'm okay with that as well. We talked with a number of parents and said that if it's a matter of funding, we'll come up with the funding one way or another. That doesn't need to be the limiting factor. So
So
yeah,
I
go ahead.
see Chris nodding and Kathy.
Yeah, I think if we can find the funds elsewhere, I mean, you just hate to think that wouldn't be an option, but
And Jane?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I just got unmuted. Sorry, it takes me a minute. Yeah, I agree with everyone as well, that I think it would
Okay.
be good to use the
So-
other fund if we decide to go that route.
Sounds like consensus, then take it out. And if somebody wants to do it, Dream It Up Fund.
Mhm. Okay.
Bradley, for the staff, did you put the positions in?
Yes, those are in the headers now. That's program staff now list
Okay.
minister and the religious educator, and support staff list
Okay,
me, membership, and accompanist.
got it.
So the accompanist is another thing. I didn't pull that budget, but that's kind of a questionable thing. It's a hard thing to hire for.
That's the
And-
accompanist for the choir.
It is. In, let's see, it's $1,800. My best guess, just based on like what it costs to have an accompanist, say for a special music at church or something, I think you'd probably, for a 9-month thing, you're probably looking in the $500 to $7,500 range. I don't think that that's realistic. It worked because we had a member doing that, and it was really just kind of a nicety for so many years. But there's a little room there. You know, perhaps right now it's best to just leave it and consider it cushion.
Mhm.
Coming back down, you all still see this? You see the orange box in the middle?
Yep.
Okay. So Sunday Services Committee. It's looking like it'll be about $1,000 spent this year of $2,950 that was budgeted. So I would be inclined to maybe not go too crazy, but take it down some.
How about let's do 1,500?
Mm.
Is that
Or 2,000.
2,000?
It's a major component. We need to make sure that they're well supported, but if we have, you know, if it's lower cost recently, I think we should reduce it.
Yeah,
I would
it
think so.
covers things like guest and student ministers who come to speak and their travel. And if we need licensing or for music and pieces like that, copyright fees. What is that called? Rental fees for using, you know, certain things, and we've had to depend more on some of those items with
Yeah, license.
virtual service license. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. That's what I was trying to say.
So this year of that $1,000, only a couple hundred is our like royalty fees.
Mhm.
Honorariums, the going rate is $350, and that's typically for ministers. So if we just take the $2,950 and divide it by the $350 honorarium, that's about 8.5 times we could have someone. We still have lay possibilities for pulpit supply, for having people in the pulpit. And in fact, that's probably something that we should encourage, or we're going to start to lose that ability. Because
Well-
people's comfort level will go away.
We also have a smaller committee. That
Well, you
is-
don't have to be on the Sunday Service Committee to present a service.
No, but the bandwidth and stuff like that. So bringing in extra speakers
Mhm.
is, and there's not just ministers, but other types of speakers. Sometimes there's a fee, so.
Right.
And I don't know how long Kent's gonna be around.
Right. But if we're talking like paying the market rate, what's there doesn't do a lot. It's a big number for us in our budget, but as far as what it buys in the outside world, it's not a lot. So it's kind of picking picking your battles, I guess. What do other people think about, say, if we just made it an even 2,000, which would be twice what they've spent so far this year, or if we did 2,500, anything helps at this point.
Yeah, I'm okay with 2,000, especially if that's twice what they did last year. It allows some expansion. But you know, it allows us to reduce a bit.
Did they just not
Yeah,
spend
and
as much
if
because of
I-
COVID?
I'm
I
sorry.
think 2002. This is Jane. Sorry, I was just going to say I think 2000 also, because often with our budget we haven't spent it, but unless you're thinking, Sarah, that we would spend more.
Yeah, I don't know. We always anticipate that we're gonna have more external speakers than what we've had.
Kathy, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just curious. Was it because of COVID last year that the funds didn't get spent as much?
Well,
Well-
that's this year.
This year.
Kent is finding himself to be quite an expert at asking people to waive their royalties.
Well, yeah, and I think over the summer we had, I don't know that we had to pay for the consortium of people.
We
Um,
didn't.
So that probably saved money
Mhm.
overall.
And
and
I think-
then
I
Kent
think
did
that's anticipated
everything,
to
like,
continue.
Right, so, and then like October was 5 Sundays and we would have had, some other lay-led services, but these, all 5 were lay-led, and then Kent ended up helping with all of them. So I think, yeah, just going through that whole transition to hybrid was more minister intense
Mhm.
than we would have if we'd been hybrid earlier or in person.
I'm okay to go to 2,000.
So we've got Kathy 2,000, Chris 2,000, Mike 2,000, Sam 2,000, Jane 2,000. Okay, 2,000 it is.
Well, and one, it feels silly to kind of, and like a broken record. But if we need it, there is, $9,000 in that Dream It Up fund. And this would be a great use of it to bring other speakers in if needed. So I think we'll be fine there. Okay.
Well, I have a question about the good neighbor line. Can you remind me of what the good neighbor line is about?
So Good Neighbor is a community organization. It's another nonprofit that provides direct assistance to people in need. They do it through rent and utility assistance, as well as food vouchers
Okay.
and gas vouchers. Yeah, so this is kind of more of a philosophical question. We contribute a lot outside of our doors, and does it make sense for us to have a potential deficit of almost 38,000, where we're basically out of other places to cut, and yet still give 1,500 to Good Neighbor? I only bring it up because I've gone through similar discussions with my own church. We wrestled with it as well. And I think that it would come up at the annual meeting. I think people support the organization and that it's good, but it's a do you rob Peter to pay Paul kind of thing.
How did the, what determines that it's 1,500 and not some other value? I remember there was one line item, I forgot which one it was, that was dependent on the membership or the budget that we have.
So if memory serves, Good Neighbor has always been just kind of a picked amount. I think when I first started here in 2014, it was either 2,000 or it was 2,500, and it has whittled down over the years to 1,500. Our dues to Amos, it's kind of a similar question, I guess, if you want it to be. That's based on a percentage of the budget. The only other line in the budget that is like directly based on a membership figure is the library funding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the one you were maybe referring to, Klaus, was the Amos.
Yes.
So have we typically done 1,500, and do we have a member on Amos? I mean, a UUFA member who serves on that board?
For Good Neighbor, Jamie,
Yeah,
do
for
you
Good
know?
Neighbor. No?
Was it Cynthia Martin?
So Cynthia Martin has had, she does leadership roles in Amos. With Good Neighbor, I don't know.
The other one was the homeless, where we
Yeah,
had a
the
board
ERP,
member. Okay,
which
so it
we
wasn't
do-
Good Neighbor.
No, and
Okay.
we do not currently have someone serving for the Bridge Home. Jamie, do you know, is someone serving on Good Neighbor?
Last year we had Cynthia, and then Sarah Manat was doing the Bridge Home, but honestly, I don't know if either one of them did anything. So,
Mhm.
yeah, but we didn't fill the positions because I thought those two were still on it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Good Neighbor wasn't one of the board positions that we had to fill.
No, and neither was
Okay.
the Bridge Home. Yeah. But like I said, I don't know if those two have done anything.
So what do people think about Good Neighbor? I think let's make a decision.
I think that we continue to fund it at the current level.
When I asked what is Good Neighbor some time ago, I was told that is the mechanism by which we directly help those in immediate need. That was the answer. If someone showed up on our doorstep and said, "Hi, can I have some money to feed my kids or whatever?" we directed them to Good Neighbor because we didn't do that ourselves.
Mhm.
If we are not going to fund Good Neighbor, what's our answer going to be?
So technically we have two sources there. So the first is Good Neighbor. That's the first, I guess, quote, line of defense. That's perhaps not the greatest term, but and then the second option that we have is the Minister Undesignated Fund, which is a benevolence fund. And it currently has $925 in it. It's pretty small. It normally goes, when we have payouts, they're normally around $100 or so. So it wouldn't go very far. And that fund does not really have an ongoing funding source. We're not regularly putting money in there. the typical money that comes in for that is if past presidents get an honorarium, several of them will directly donate it to that. Oh, sorry, an honorarium for a wedding or something like that.
Okay, so I heard one, keep it in as it is. I haven't heard others.
I think we heard two, and I'm gonna add a third one. I think we should keep it in.
And Kathy,
We just decrease it a little bit? Or
like how much, Kathy?
I don't know, to 1,000?
And Jane, what do you think?
Well, I definitely think we should keep it in. I'm open to reducing it a bit, but I think we should not reduce it very much if we do. Can I ask a question? When we do the plate split on Sundays, where does the other half of that go? Because that goes to our congregation, right? Is there a line item for that? I don't have any of that in front of me, so I'm sorry if it's shown up somewhere.
Yep. So half of that does go to us, and that's budgeted for next year at $3,000. And then the other half goes to the recipient, which is budgeted next year at $3,500. And the difference there is because on our online system, you can designate specifically that it goes to the recipient versus it automatically just being split. So I am working on pulling up the historical for the good neighbor line. So we can.
So are there other areas you wanted us to look at for cutting?
No, that was it.
Okay, and what are we at if we don't cut it?
If we don't cut it, we're at negative 37,843.
Okay, and if we cut it to 1,000, we would be at
37,343. Because it's only cutting $500.
It doesn't make that much of a difference, so you can just keep it.
So are we at consensus to keep it?
Yep.
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Okay. Are you in Arizona still?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like we're at 37,843.
And we have our kind of talking people through what that means and how we can handle that. But my understanding is that short of reducing our staff, that is it. And, there are lots of questions with that. So.
Yeah, Bradley, I wonder if this is the version that will be shared. There's the 53,000 at the bottom. I wonder if there could be a little bit more description about what unrestricted net assets are. Because that's a bit of a baffling term for a non-financial person or somebody who doesn't know this budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree that it seems wise to have some kind of bullet points.
Yeah, that was a discussion point last meeting.
Mhm.
If I understand, it's something like this. These are the funds that have carried over from prior budgets, therefore are available to support the current one.
Right. And Stephanie actually did a really nice job. She sent something out to the finance committee that has those that kind of description on it. So she says specifically about defining unrestricted net assets. Our operating reserve, unrestricted net assets, is adequate to cover the worst case scenario. This reserve is the accumulation of unspent operating funds from prior operating years. The figure used in, oh, then she goes into last week's meeting, but we can update that.
Yeah, I wonder if you or Klaus could just drop in parentheses or something, that maybe that last line there. That'd be great.
You know, and communication wise, you know, I think it's smart to also highlight the fact that our the projected income is the worst case scenario. I mean, meaning we're probably going to get a little bit more than that, than what is projected. And as far as projected expenses, worst case scenario yet, in that it's rare for us to actually exceed those expenses.
Yeah, so I have another chart that I included in the minutes that were in last week's packet. It's the red, green, and blue chart.
Yeah.
I can include that, but there, I guess I would also encourage maybe a little caution, because we also don't want to paint too rosy a picture. That's why I'm a little hesitant to do that.
Yeah.
We could show it at the meeting though and say, well, this is our historical trend. And so we anticipate that there will be something, but I'd be hesitant to put it in a written packet that someone could pull up 6 months later and use as a gotcha. So.
Okay, so is everybody in favor of putting forward this budget? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I think looking at where we are, what is left to cut or not cut, I think we're getting to a point where it feels the expense side feels comfortable that we're budgeting appropriately to our needs. The overage, we have a solution to the overage, even though it's quite large compared to what we've done in the past. And we're aware of endowment and other backup monies should they be needed, or dream it up and do it. Yeah, I'll go ahead, and Chris was going to give that a first. I think I'll give it a second.
Okay, is anybody against this? So it sounds like we're all in favor of that. Yay. Okay, is there anything else? We've got the meeting set up. Information meetings.
I just want to ask Bradley, do you need anything from me to update on the budget, or you probably?
I've got the source document here, and I dropped in a couple of notes, so I can handle that. It's really easy.
And who's presenting the budget at the meeting, the annual meeting?
I am.
Since it's Chris. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I think that'll do us.
That'll do it.
All right,
So
thank
yeah,
you.
we had an ELT meeting just before this, and so for the
Good time.
December meeting, we're hoping it's going to be short. So
Hey,
there's something to look forward to.
Thanks
Hey,
for all your hard work.
Hey, Klaus. Yeah. Hey, Klaus. Who's going to be on the